Continuing through Phase 3, we introduce Doctor Strange. You need a spectacular actor to portray this character, and the fact that Benedict Cumberbatch has agreed to do this role is huge for us.
Benedict, he's got an incredibly complicated emotional structure going on.
One of the things that's important to us in telling a magical story is keeping it grounded, but still leaving enough room to have really cool and unique visual ideas to explore.
What you can expect from this Doctor Strange movie is a mind trip action film.
How do you put that on a screen within this cinematic universe? That is, one of the primary goals of that movie.
Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So you guys may have seen some of the Doctor Strange stuff running around. Benedict Cumberbatch buying comics in his Doctor Strange costume. They actually just tweeted that they pretty much filmed principal photography. All that means is that they finished principal photography, they're editing the film now, they'll do reshoots later, so there's still a lot of work to be done on the film, but they probably got like 80% of the footage that they need. Usually when reshoots happen on a film, it's just because there's dialogue that's missing or they need a small scene to connect to bigger scenes, really small touch-ups. But sometimes, like when you hear about the Suicide Squad doing reshoots, they'll shoot it because they want to change some big aspect of the film. But for the most part, now that they're editing Doctor Strange, you can expect to hear more about the film. They'll probably attach the first teaser for it to Captain America Civil War when that drops in theaters. That's at the beginning of May. But really what I want to talk about is Doctor Strange the Oath, why Benedict Cumberbatch is holding it up here, and what it means for the film. It's not necessarily a spoiler for the film because I'll explain what happens during that story. It's a really good retelling of his origin story, but the cast that they've announced for the film has some characters that are not part of that Oath story. So what I think they did, and this is true of all the Marvel films, is that the story of the movie borrows from a bunch of different Doctor Strange comics, but most notably, I think they'll borrow some structural elements from Doctor Strange the Oath because it tells the origin story in a really interesting way. But if you've seen the Doctor Strange animated movie, it's more of a straight-up linear telling where he gets in the accident, looks for a cure to heal his hands, ends up meeting the Ancient One, and then eventually becomes the Sorcerer Supreme. So the movie's going to cover all that stuff, but Marvel has essentially abandoned the linear origin story. So even though they're introducing new characters and they have to tell their backstories, they're finding creative ways to do that. So just to explain the Oath comic, this is actually a really good comic to read if you haven't read it yet. What happens is you pick up with Night Nurse treating Doctor Strange for injuries that he suffered in battle. While she's treating him, she learns about his origin. So even though it's a Doctor Strange comic, Night Nurse is kind of the protagonist because she's hearing this story. And the really cool thing is that the origin story isn't even the biggest story of this comic. The big A story is that Doctor Strange learns that his servant, his closest friend, Wong, has an inoperable brain tumor, so he looks for a cure and finds it in another dimension. The villain of the story is not the villain of the Doctor Strange movie, which is why I don't think they're adapting the comic, but the villain of the comic is this pharmaceutical CEO who says it'd be disastrous if Doctor Strange were to release the cure for cancer into the world. So he hires someone to steal the cure for cancer from Doctor Strange so that he can prevent it from getting out into the world. And in the end, it's almost destroyed. There's one drop left, so Strange has to choose whether to use the last little bit of it to replicate more so that he can help humanity, so that he can cure cancer for good all over the world, or cure his friend who is dying on the spot at his feet. As he's sitting there, Wong is dying, he's trying to decide what to do. The villain of the story reminds him that as a doctor, he took a Hippocratic oath to treat any patient in his care. Strange chooses to help his friend in a very Kirk Spock kind of moment, where the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. Therefore, giving the villain what he wants, the cure for cancer isn't going to be replicated, it won't benefit humanity, but Doctor Strange has saved his friend. So it's kind of a touching story where Strange has to make this huge sacrifice in order to save his friend. So great victory comes at great price. So I feel like they're going to do something similar to that in the Doctor Strange movie, where he has the power of an infinity gem, and they've been making it seem like he has the time gem. So imagine he has power over time in the movie, but he has an A-B choice to make, where he has to pick between the needs of the one and the needs of the many. I like how it all comes back to Star Trek. So you've seen the pictures of Chiwetel Ejiofor. He's playing Baron Mordo. He's a very important Doctor Strange villain who it looks like he's actually working with in the movie. The real villain of the movie is being played by Mads Mikkelsen. I believe he's playing Dormammu, who's much bigger villain than Baron Mordo, but I think Mordo would be the ultimate villain of the sequel. If you've never read the comics, it's not like Captain America and Winter Soldier where they start out as friends but become enemies. Mordo always resents Doctor Strange because he's an outsider. And like all villains having daddy issues, when the Sorcerer Supreme chooses Doctor Strange as his successor, it causes this huge rift, and that's when they become full-blown enemies. So expect to see some version of that story in the movie, but I think they'll tell it in a roundabout way like they do during The Oath. I don't think there's been any pictures of her in costume, but Tilda Swinton is actually playing the Ancient One, which I think is a really interesting twist on the casting. But here's my big question for you guys. Just like they did with Ant-Man and some of the smaller Marvel films, they do tie in with the Avengers franchise, but in really small ways. How do you think that we'll see Doctor Strange tie in with the other Marvel films? The interesting thing about the Oath comic that I was talking about is that there are a lot of Defenders characters in there. So you have Iron Fist, you have Daredevil, because Doctor Strange is part of the Defenders in the comics. That's not going to be the case in the movie universe. The Netflix stuff is connected to the movies, but really only lightly. I think we'll only see them cross over in Avengers Infinity War. If you guys missed the Captain America video that I just posted, I talked a little bit about what's going on this week. There's some things that are on break, so there's some bonus videos that I'm working on. There is a new episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I'll post a video for that later. There's a Flash bonus video that I'm working on, so what I'll probably do is I'll post the Flash bonus video next, then I'll post Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on YouTube. I know there was a question about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. last week. I posted a bonus video to my Facebook page. If you missed that, the address is facebook.com/emergencyawesome. But for the most part, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the rest of the season will post to my YouTube channel. While you guys wait for me to post that next video, you can click here for my Black Panther versus Captain America video, and you can click here for all my other Captain America Civil War videos. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.